I was sitting at our kitchen table going over the catering contract for our wedding when her phone buzzed face up, and I saw a message from her ex that said, "I still think about that night in Charleston. And honestly, I think we both know this marriage is a mistake." Hey friends, please subscribe and turn on notifications, like this video, and leave a comment with your impressions. This will be a great help. Thank you. We never tire of reminding you. It's all thanks to you. It was early August in Savannah, Georgia, one of those weeks when the heat wraps around you like a wet blanket and the moss hangs heavy on every oak tree in the squares. I'm 37. Work as a project estimator for a mid-sized construction company based out of the historic district. Solid job, good reputation in the industry, the kind of career where your word and your paperwork need to match up perfectly or clients stop calling. I'd built that reputation over 10 years, and I brought the same precision to everything else in my life, including my relationship with Meredith. Meredith is 33, works as a dental hygienist at a practice on Bull Street. Quiet, steady, the kind of woman who seemed perfectly matched to my personality. We'd been together for 4 years, engaged for 6 months, and we were 6 weeks away from our wedding date, September 22nd. The venue was booked. The dress was altered. The honeymoon in the Keys was paid for. Everything was moving forward on schedule. That Tuesday, I'd come home around 5:30 after a long day at a job site. Meredith was in the kitchen making pasta, humming along to something playing from her phone on the counter. The phone was propped up against the backsplash, screen facing outward so she could see the time while she cooked. Normal setup. Nothing unusual. I set my keys down and walked over to pour myself some water. As I passed the counter, her phone buzzed. The screen lit up with a text preview, and because it was right there in front of me, I read it without even thinking. The name at the top said Garrett. No last name, just Garrett. The message read, "I still think about that night in Charleston, and honestly, I think we both know this marriage is a mistake." I stopped walking. Read it again. The words were lowercase, casual, like this was a normal thing to say to someone who was 6 weeks from marrying another man. Garrett Holloway, Meredith's ex from her early 30s. They dated for almost 2 years when they both lived in Charleston before she moved to Savannah for her current job about 3 years ago. I'd heard his name exactly 4 times in our relationship. Each time it came up, she'd wave it off. Old news. Nothing there. Completely over it. I had no reason to doubt her. Meredith hadn't seen the notification yet. She was at the stove stirring sauce, back turned to the counter. I looked at the phone for another few seconds, then walked past it to fill my glass. "How was the site today?" she asked without turning around. "Long," I said. "Concrete pour ran behind schedule." "Sounds rough. Dinner's almost ready." "Thanks." I sat down at the kitchen table and drank my water. My mind was very quiet. Not panicked, not angry. Just still. The way it gets when I'm looking at a contract and something doesn't add up. You don't react. You go back and check the numbers. We ate dinner. We talked about normal things, her day at the practice, a neighbor's dog that kept barking, whether we needed to pick up more wine for the weekend. Meredith seemed relaxed, happy even. I watched her face and tried to find the crack, the tell, the thing that would confirm what I'd just read. I couldn't find it. She was very good at this. After dinner, she went to take a shower. I cleared the plates, then sat back down at the table with my own phone and opened our shared planning folder, the one we'd created together on Google Drive specifically for wedding logistics. Vendor contracts, payment schedules, guest lists, all of it in one place so we could both stay on top of things. I pulled up the catering contract first. Total cost for the reception dinner, $14,200. Deposit paid in July, $5,000, from our joint checking account. Per the contract, cancellation with more than 30 days' notice would result in a full refund of the deposit minus a $200 administrative fee. Our wedding was September 22nd. Today was August 6th, 47 days out. Still within the refund window. I opened the venue contract next. Riverside Garden Estate, a property just outside the city with a ceremony area under live oaks and a reception hall with river views. Total package, $22,000. Deposit, $8,000, paid in June. Cancellation policy, full deposit refund if canceled more than 45 days before the event. 47 days. I was still inside the window, but barely. 2 days of margin. The photographer, a woman named Linda Chun who'd been highly recommended. Contract total, for $1,800. Deposit, 2,000. Her cancellation clause required 30 days notice for a full deposit refund minus a $100 processing fee. I went through every vendor contract in the folder, one by one, and mapped out exactly where we stood on cancellation windows. For each one, I noted the deadline, the refund amount, and the contact information. By the time Meredith came out of the bathroom in her pajamas, I had a complete picture. "You okay?" she asked, seeing me at the table with my phone. "You've been quiet tonight." "Just going over some numbers," I said. "Wedding stuff?" "Yeah, wedding stuff." She smiled and kissed the top of my head. "We're going to be married in 7 weeks. Can you believe it?" "Not really," I said, and I meant it, though not in the way she thought. I didn't confront her that night. I needed more than one text message preview. I needed to understand the scope of what I was dealing with before I made any moves. Wednesday morning, I went to work as normal. During my lunch break, I sat in my truck in the parking lot and thought carefully about what I knew and what I didn't. I knew Garrett had sent that message. I knew the content of what he said, referencing a night in Charleston, implying he thought the marriage was a mistake. I knew Meredith hadn't mentioned any of this to me. What I didn't know was how long they'd been in contact, whether she'd been seeing him, or what that night in Charleston referred to. But the phrasing told me enough. This wasn't a one-time text from someone reaching out cold. This was a continuation of something. I spent the rest of Wednesday afternoon doing what I do best at work. I organized my approach. I made a list of the practical steps I'd need to take if I decided to end things, with realistic timelines and costs. I calculated exactly how much money was at risk if I canceled every wedding vendor within the next 2 days versus waiting. The numbers were stark. Every day I waited, I lost more leverage on the refund windows. Thursday morning, I called the venue first thing. Riverside Garden Estate. This is Patricia speaking. "Hi, Patricia. This is Andrew Callahan. Meredith Dawson and I have a wedding booked for September 22nd. "Yes, Mr. Callahan. How can I help you?" "I need to cancel the booking." A pause. "I'm sorry to hear that. Let me pull up your file." Keyboard sounds. "Okay, I have you here. Your deposit was $8,000, paid June 14th. Per your contract, since you're canceling more than 45 days before the event, you're eligible for a full refund minus our standard administrative fee of $300. That's what I understood. I'll need written cancellation confirmation from both parties listed on the contract. That's you and Meredith Dawson. I can send mine today. I'll work on getting Meredith's confirmation separately. That's fine. Once we have both signatures, we'll process the refund within 10 business days. Thank you, Patricia. I drafted and sent my cancellation confirmation by 10 a.m. Then I called the caterer. Same process, same result. My portion of the cancellation went through. Refund of $2,300 pending the other party's confirmation. Then the photographer. Linda was understanding. "These things happen," she said quietly. "I'll process your portion of the refund once I hear from Meredith as well." By noon Thursday, I'd initiated cancellation with every vendor on our list. The total amount I stood to recover, assuming Meredith confirmed her portion, was just under $9,000. The amounts I'd personally contributed to those deposits, tracked through our joint account, and my personal contributions, totaled about $5,800. The rest had come from her family's contribution to the wedding fund. That evening, I sat down with Meredith at the kitchen table after dinner. I'd thought about how to start this conversation all day, and I decided the simplest approach was the best one. "I need to ask you about Garrett," I said. Her face didn't change immediately. There was that half-second delay I'd noticed before, the tiny lag between hearing something unexpected and deciding how to respond. Then her expression settled into mild confusion. "What about him?" "Tuesday night, when you were cooking, your phone buzzed on the counter. I saw the message." Her jaw tightened, just slightly. "What message?" "The one where he said he still thinks about a night in Charleston, and that he thinks our marriage is a mistake." She was quiet for a long moment. I watched her think, watched her calculate. Then she took a breath. "Okay, fine. Garrett and I have been talking." "For how long?" "A few weeks." "About what?" "About everything. About how I've been feeling." "And how have you been feeling?" She looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read, something between defiance and guilt. "Trapped, Andrew. I've been feeling trapped." "Trapped? By all of this?" She gestured broadly. "The apartment, the wedding plans, the life we'd built together. The wedding, the timeline, all these expectations. I feel like I'm drowning in logistics and nobody is asking me if I actually want this. I've asked you multiple times. You said yes, because that's what you wanted to hear. That's not an answer. That's an excuse. She crossed her arms. Garrett understands what I'm going through. He's been through something similar. His last relationship was suffocating too. We've just been talking about it. Just talking. Yes. And the night in Charleston he mentioned? Her eyes dropped. That was before you and I got together. Near the end of our relationship. It was one night. It didn't mean anything at the time. But it means something now. Enough for him to bring it up while you're engaged to someone else. He's just being honest about how he feels. And how do you feel? I don't know. That's not good enough, Meredith. We're 6 weeks from a wedding. Which is exactly why I haven't said anything. Because the timing is terrible, and I didn't want to hurt you, and I thought maybe I could work through it on my own. Work through what? Through whether I want to go through with this. I sat with that for a moment. The words landed clearly, without ambiguity. She was telling me, plainly, that she wasn't sure she wanted to marry me, while she'd been secretly reconnecting with her ex-boyfriend. Here's what I need you to understand, I said, keeping my voice steady. I started canceling the wedding vendor contracts this morning. Her eyes went wide. You what? I called the venue, the caterer, the photographer. I initiated cancellation on all of them. My portions of the deposits will be refunded once you confirm your portions. You can't just do that without talking to me first. I'm talking to you now. Andrew, this is insane. You're canceling our wedding because I had a few conversations with an old friend. I'm canceling our wedding because you told me 30 seconds ago that you don't know if you want to marry me. And because you've been secretly talking to your ex-boyfriend about your feelings while planning a wedding with me. Those aren't small things. I was going to figure it out. By when? The morning of. I just needed more time. You've had 4 years. You've had 6 months of engagement. You've had 6 weeks of wedding planning where you smiled and said yes to everything. And this whole time you've been talking to Garrett about how trapped you feel. That's not a timing problem. That's an honesty problem. She started crying. I didn't want to hurt you. You're hurting me right now, but at least now I know the truth, and I can act on it. What does that mean? It means I'm moving out. I've already looked at apartments. I'm going to sign a lease this week. You've already looked, she stared at me. How long have you been planning this? Since Tuesday night, when I saw that text. I've spent 2 days mapping out every practical step. That's what I do, Meredith. I plan carefully. I make sure the paperwork is right. And right now, the paperwork says I need to protect myself. This isn't paperwork. This is our life. It is. And you chose to handle our life by lying to me and talking to your ex behind my back. I'm choosing to handle it by being honest and making smart decisions. She tried every angle after that. She said she'd cut contact with Garrett. She said she'd go to counseling. She said she loved me and the wedding was what she wanted after all. I listened to each one without interrupting, and then I said the same thing. My decision was made. Finally, she stood up, wiped her face, and said, "You're the most cold-blooded person I've ever met. I'm the most prepared person you've ever met. There's a difference." She went into the bedroom and closed the door. I spent the next 10 days moving out. I was methodical about it, photographing everything, documenting what belonged to whom, handling the shared finances with precision. I transferred my portion of our joint checking account to my personal account on Friday, after confirming with our bank that both account holders were permitted to withdraw up to their documented contribution amounts. I kept records of every transaction. Meredith eventually confirmed her portions of the vendor cancellations, mostly because she wanted the refunds processed. The total came back to our joint account, and I withdrew my share based on the contribution records we'd kept. The contact attempts came in predictable waves. First, an unknown number, texting on the 9th day after I'd started packing. "Andrew, this is Garrett. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Meredith and I were just talking as friends. Please don't throw away what you have with her over something that doesn't mean anything." I blocked the number without responding. 2 days later, Meredith's sister, Diane, called me. I answered because I'd always liked Diane. She was straightforward and kind. "Andrew, I'm calling because Meredith is a wreck." She told me what happened. "Hi, Diane. I appreciate the call. She says you canceled the wedding and you're moving out." That's accurate. Over conversations with an ex? Over a pattern of dishonesty during one of the most important commitments of our lives. The conversations with Garrett were the symptom. The lying was the disease. Diane was quiet for a moment. "She says she loves you." I believe her. It wasn't enough to make her honest with me. People make mistakes, Andrew. They do. And sometimes the consequence is that the other person leaves. That's what's happening. I had to try. I know. Take care of yourself, Diane. The third attempt was an email, 3 weeks after I'd moved out. Subject: I owe you more than an apology. The message was long and genuinely remorseful, or at least it read that way. Meredith wrote about how she'd spent weeks in therapy trying to understand why she'd done what she did. She explained that Garrett had actually been pursuing her actively for months, sending messages she'd been responding to more and more frequently without fully acknowledging what was happening. She said she'd realized, too late, that she'd been so caught up in the emotional pull of their history that she'd stopped being present in her actual life. She said she'd told Garrett it was over, permanently, and that she'd blocked him on everything. She ended with, I know you're not going to forgive me, and I'm not asking you to. I just wanted you to know that what you did, walking away cleanly, protecting yourself, being honest, it was the right call. I wish I had been half as brave. I read it twice. Then I closed my laptop and sat in my new apartment, a one-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood called Ardsley Park, with tall windows and hardwood floors and absolutely no ghosts. The quiet karma unfolded over the following weeks without any input from me. A mutual friend mentioned casually that Garrett had actually been seeing someone else the entire time he'd been texting Meredith, a woman he lived with in Charleston. Meredith had found out when she'd finally confronted him about where things stood. He'd told her she'd always been a nice escape, but that he wasn't interested in anything serious. The humiliation of that revelation, on top of losing the wedding and the relationship, hit her hard. She moved out of the apartment we'd shared, couldn't afford it alone, and went back to her parents' place temporarily. I heard about most of this secondhand, through mutual connections, and I didn't seek any of it out. It wasn't satisfaction I felt when I learned the details. It was more like confirmation, a receipt from the universe that the decision I'd made had been the right one. By October, I'd settled fully into my new life. Ardsley Park was peaceful, tree-lined, exactly the kind of neighborhood where you could walk to a coffee shop on a Saturday morning and feel like the world was exactly the right size. I started cooking more seriously, something I'd always wanted to do but never prioritized. I joined a weekend hiking group that met at a trailhead outside the city. I ran every morning before work, and by November I was faster and stronger than I'd been in years. It was a Saturday in late October when I ran into Meredith. I was at a farmer's market near my neighborhood, looking at local honey and talking to a vendor about their beeswax candles, when I heard her voice behind me. Andrew. I turned. She was standing there with a small canvas bag, looking better than the last time I'd seen her, healthier, less drawn. Her hair was longer. She was wearing a simple sundress and sandals, no makeup, looking more like herself than she had in months. Hey, I said. Hi. I didn't expect to see you here. I come every Saturday. How are you? I'm okay. Getting better. She shifted her weight. I'm back in my own place. Got an apartment in the Starland district. That's a good neighborhood. It is. Smaller than what we had, but it suits me. She paused. How are you? Really? I'm good. Better than good, actually. You look it. She smiled, and it was genuine, no performance behind it. This suits you. The market, the neighborhood. It looks like you found your thing. I think I did. We stood there for a moment in comfortable silence, which surprised me. Then she said, I talked to Garrett. One last time. He confirmed what I already knew, that I was never his priority. I just wanted to hear him say it. Did it help? A little. Mostly it just confirmed that I needed to stop looking backward. That's a good place to be. Andrew. She hesitated. I know the answer is no. I already know that. But I just want to say, what you did, the way you handled everything, it was the most respectful thing anyone has ever done for me, even though it ended us. Thank you for saying that. I deserved better for myself. And so did you. Yeah, we both did. She nodded. Well, I should let you get back to your honey shopping. She laughed softly. Take care of yourself, Meredith. I mean that. I will. You too, Andrew. She turned and walked toward the produce stalls, and I watched her go for a moment before turning back to the vendor. I bought a jar of wildflower honey and a beeswax candle, paid cash, and continued down the market rows. The morning was warm, but not oppressive. The air smelled like grilled peaches and fresh bread. People were laughing, talking, living their lives in the open. I walked through it all with my small paper bag, completely at ease, completely present. Later that evening, I sat on my back porch with a glass of wine, watching the light change through the live oaks. The candle I'd bought was burning on the railing, its flames steady in the still air. Everything around me was quiet, chosen, and mine. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt complete. Have you ever been in a situation where someone was already halfway out the door emotionally before you even knew the relationship was in trouble? I'd genuinely like to hear how you navigated that. Share your experience in the comments.